I believe in the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. I believe in the God of Israel. I believe in one God. I believe that Christ was manifest in the flesh as one God. Like the old Israel who painted lamb's blood on their doorpost, I believe that Christ is my true lamb, and his blood has been painted upon me. I believe that the same God of Israel will protect me from all evils and sicknesses of this world, and I will do my best to keep the laws, the statutes, and the commandments. I believe that my Messiah died for my sins. I believe that he raised from the dead, and I believe that he will come again to judge the whole house of Israel. I believe that my God has created the heavens and the earth and everything upon it. I believe in one God who is holy and righteous. I believe that the God of Israel is my Father. There is only one God. There is only one God of Israel. I will give my whole soul, body, and spirit to the one God of Israel, for he is righteous and he is my Father. Hear, O Israel, the Lord our God is one Lord, Selah and Selah. Amen.
All right.
Well, peace and good afternoon, everyone.
Peace, peace.
Welcome to AIJ Television, coming to you from the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries. I am Elder Freddie. Beside me is teacher Ezekiel. Peace, everyone. And today we are going to discuss, Ezekiel, we're going to have a conversation about a very interesting topic. And this is the topic of Purim. Some people pronounce it as Purim. However, I tend to pronounce it as Purim because it comes to my, I guess, vocabulary a lot easier for me, depending on how I feel at the moment. But for myself, I'll stick with the Purim. And you have brought some very interesting facts, very interesting, how can I say, subjects from the actual topic of Purim. The story of Purim, or should I say, the evolution of the actual thing that is Purim, so to speak. It comes from our book, this Israelite book, this Israelite scripture, and in a particular book called Esther, which is shortly after.
This is the number one book.
It is.
And I think the audience like really needs to know that like everyone wants to get their hands on this book. And the big problem with that is once people do that, it can change a lot. You know, like we always see so many things can change just from people want to get their hands on this blueprint of how we live our life, about the children of the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob.
Yes.
Everyone has a copy of this.
And which is one of the things that we always stress. We always get into the fact of the matter that this is the Bible, the Holy Bible. It is an Israelite book. This is a book that documents the history of the children of Israel, the Israelites. For most people that are tuning in, we do know and acknowledge that this is not an introduction to the Bible for those of us who are online and we're searching. So it should never be from a perspective that we are just beginning. We know that this is an Israelite book.
100%.
The stories written about are stories that have been conveyed to us by the Israelite people. And in doing so, we do acknowledge that this is not a Christian book. 100%. This is not a book of different philosophies, even though people have taken it on. And as you said, they read the book and then automatically assume a lot of things because there's a lot of noise that's out there. So when we do sit down and we start to read the actual book, it gives us a completely different story than what people have been projecting over these years. And one of those things that we're going to get into today
is Purim.
Yes.
Purim Exposed. And I think it's the perfect title for this message because this is the age of information.
Yep.
Everyone has access to information. You know, someone watches a 25-minute YouTube video and all of a sudden they're an expert at it.
Right.
People are creating their own understanding, their own booklets and pamphlets just to justify their understanding, and they're throwing it out there.
Yes.
So there's information on top of information, so it creates a lot of noise. And even to our scriptures, our holy scriptures, there's a lot of noise there, even for the topic of Purim. And so now, we have to do what we got to do. We have to expose it. We have to make sure that you and I are all on the same page, that everyone knows that this is an Israelite book, that there's no faulty information. We just deal with the truth and the facts of this Bible.
Yes. And so we're going to have that conversation. It might be a difficult conversation for some people to have, but again, because we are members of the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, we are the leading authority when it comes to Israelite history and culture. And as I noted last time that I was speaking and delivering a message, it's so important for us to tell our story.
Yes, I remember that.
We have to, because no one else can tell our story but us. But let's get into something that might seem confusing to some people. But however, it's made crystal clear with the spirit of understanding that has been granted to us by the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. And even how I should say and introduce as well too, the messenger of the covenant, which is our elder Shadrach, which through his work and through his effort introduced us to the God of Israel. And that allows us to pray to our God and to ask for that spirit of understanding. Because without the spirit of understanding, you can't really decipher and differentiate between the knowledge that people actually are putting out there and the knowledge that is actually what is truth. And in order for us to really dive into it, you have to know the spirit of truth.
It's the secret sauce.
To see and to decipher, to differentiate, to sift through all of that knowledge that you're gaining and to see what actually is the God of Israel.
100%.
So let's get into some of that.
Okay. And so for those of you that don't know, we're talking about Purim. Purim. Now, for me, my whole entire life, I've always been an Israelite. Purim has been one of the most enjoyous times for me personally.
That is an extreme blessing for you.
Yeah.
Because most of us are not in the position, we're never in the position that you were blessed to come into. We were all Christians at one point in time.
I'm so sorry to hear about that. So sorry to hear about that.
But we don't discard it, because the fact that we were Christians at one point in time, we had no choice in the matter. We were raised as Christians, being part of this Christian society. So when the veil was lifted from, and again, thanks to our elder Shadrach for really laying the groundwork. And for most of us coming out of Christianity, we owe that thanks and that gratitude to our elder Shadrach. So now when a second generation comes along, and you were never raised as a Christian, but for your whole life, from the time that you were in your mother's womb, you were being raised as a true Israelite. So now you don't have to go through all of that, all the pain, the agony of being deceived. So now you come out into the world and your eyes are crystal clear. So you have the ability to decipher and to see from the start, from being a child, being able to say, okay, well, if I am taught this, and if I'm this, well, what is that?
You know, it's funny that you mentioned that, because that is my experience. So being sheltered, having this culture, this community, this family, brethren, I've only known Purim for all my life. And so when I take what I know in here and I put it out there in that microcosm, that bigger, larger world, I get some confrontation. I get like, what's going on? I feel weird sometimes. It's like, oh my gosh, guys, Purim is coming up. I'm so excited. People look at me like I'm an alien. What's Purim? I mean, what do you mean what's Purim? Did you not read the Bible? Do you not know about the scriptures? You don't know about Esther? You don't know what she did for her people about in the land of 127 provinces? Like, come on, no one knows about Purim, to my surprise. and then when you do come across a person that does know about Purim, it's taken to some whole other place, I'm like, they're mentioning all sorts of things, all sorts of extra words and terminologies and definitions I've never seen before in the Bible. So then I'm confused. I'm like, what's going on? Not like we can't even have a conversation because they're referencing things that are no longer scriptural or at least in the biblical context, irrelevant. So it's like, how do you solve for these things? What's going out in the world? How do we sift through all this noise and all this information?
Let's do that, because I remember in leading up to this conversation that we're gonna have, I sort of introduced you to some of the things that were out there, and you said, well, it's just a simple story.
Yeah, it's a simple story.
It's just a simple story. How do we get to there from just a simple story? And it's quite interesting when you see it really unfolding before your eyes. So I really appreciate the perspective that you're coming from.
Yeah.
And that you can actually, because I would have to say that you're amongst my nephews, like within all the children that we have here in the nation, you are extremely intelligent, and I like the way that you view things. And it's not that, okay, well, Ezekiel, this is how you were raised, this is what we do, and this is that, and there's nothing else. You actually go out and you ask questions, and you go out and you speak to people, and you engage in those conversations, and it's not a matter of, okay, well, I do this because my parents told me. Well, I do this, and here's the reason why. So you have a firm grasp of the understanding of what it is that you do and what it is that you are. And so in doing that, you're able to actually stand up in the spirit of truth, and you can see how everything ties back to our scriptures when you venture off into the world of knowledge and you venture off amongst the other cultures and the other philosophies that are out there. And then that's where you really get to stack up and compare the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob to the other gods. And you see how it compares. And you tell us.
You see the bigger picture.
What did you find?
So many things. But you know what? To that point, there is a lot to talk about. So, and just to give the audience some context, because Purim, not a lot of people know about Purim. But if I were to break down Purim real quick, it's a story about an Israelite princess, Esther. Original name was Hadassah. That's her original name. So it's a historical account about Queen Esther and her uncle Mordecai. Through faith in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they were able to save their people, the Israelites, from the plot initiated by a high-ranking individual named Haman within the Persian kingdom. So, and when you go through the whole story, it's a nice story. I'm not sure if you want to touch on some of the scriptures.
Well, we'll definitely have to, because we have to have a place of reference.
Exactly.
We can't really, although this is AIJ television, we can't really get into everything that we want to without having that reference, because this is our book. This is our history book. This is our foundation. And it just so happens that this is the most populous book since the dawn of mankind.
It's everywhere.
It is the most populous, the most read, the most transcribed, the most translated, the number one selling book of all time.
Till this day.
Till this day is the Israelite Bible. These pages, these stories, these people, these are all Israelite people, and everything else derives from that. When it comes to philosophy, when it comes to quote-unquote religion, when it comes to even politics, and these are all different things that it touches on. And so to understand that this is actually the book of our story, our people, our history, our culture, and then when we find out and we cross-reference and then we see what actually came out of it, it's very interesting to see. And I know we've been hinting at it
the whole entire time, isn't it?
This whole process of introducing everyone to it. But I really and truly want to get into that conversation. So please, Ezekiel, teacher Ezekiel, without further ado, let's get into some of the notes that you've gathered and some of the things that we've uncovered 100%. In the exposing of Purim.
So I watched the video. And in this video, there was a gentleman talking about, Purim, Purim Exposed, or the mystical aspects of Purim. And I'm watching the video and I'm thinking, like, when did it become this complicated?
Yes.
Like I mentioned before, it's just a simple story about an Israelite princess who became the queen of a large region of Persia, with 127 provinces, that was set to be destroyed by a high-ranking official within that time. And through their faith, through their courage, they were able to call upon the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob to come together with a plan and prevent that from happening. And as a result, we celebrate it till this day. That's just like the quick synopsis of the story.
Okay.
Just the basic sparks notes of the story. But I'm watching this video where a person's going into the discovery of Purim. And what they were bringing up related to something called the Kabbalah.
Okay.
Where they talked about how each chapter corresponds with one of the 10 seraph of the Kabbalah, of the Tree of Life. They mentioned how the hidden name of God suggests a mystical code, how the concepts like divine emanation were all parts of these 10 chapters.
Interestingly enough.
You know what I'm saying?
10 chapters in the book of Esther.
Yes.
Okay.
So I'm like, whoa, what's going on here? So it like all these extra layers, all these extra roots, and then it's like now I have to, in order for me to understand where they're coming from, I have to do my research now. I have to dive in a little bit deeper.
Okay.
So what is this mysticism? What is this this Kabbalah lens that they're using just to understand the basic scriptures of Esther?
Yes.
And the story of the Israelites. But when you think about that, what do you think about that when you hear something about like the 10 seraph of the Kabbalah?
I right away I'm very confused. The way I look at it is that, well, I'm an Israelite, practicing Israelite. One of the things that you know that, and it's just, it goes without saying, that you first have to get into the identity of the children of Israel.
Yeah.
And in doing so, you would have to know about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, our forefathers. You would have to know about our story as a people. You would have to know about Moses and what Moses was commissioned to do for us. And when we were taken out of Egypt,
the genealogy and the chronological.
Our genealogy, and then we were given the outline as to what we're supposed to do and what we're not supposed to do.
Basic.
And one of the things that we are not supposed to do, and that is to indulge in witchcraft. And when you get into mysticism, when you get into the astrologies and the necromancing and the familiar spirits and all of those things, you start to understand that the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob forbade his people from practicing and being involved in such practices. So when the term mysticism comes up, and when you research the Kabbalah, and you look into those areas, you start to see how this doesn't make sense because it conflicts with the commandments, the laws, and the statutes of the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. So how is it that you can use this as your basis of foundation when the God of Israel says, don't practice these things? Because these things the other nations do. And I want you to be separate and apart from these other nations.
Yes.
He wants us to direct our worship to him.
Yes.
And to seek our God for our guidance, to seek our God for our direction in life. And that's why he gave us laws, statutes, and commandments, so that we would not follow the other nations in their mysticisms, in their ancient practices of familiar spirits and trying to discover what spirituality is when it isn't. He wants us to worship the Creator and not the things that were created.
Exactly.
So
just to highlight the Creator.
Yeah. So that's
so perfect.
My take on the whole.
Yeah.
The whole thing, because it's conflicting.
It is conflicting.
Yeah.
And I hear you speak. And one of my favorite verses that just comes into my mind, Matthew 10, verse 34, where it says, or this is Jesus the Christ speaking, where it says, I have come not to bring peace into the world, but I have come with a sword.
Yes.
And that sword is just to separate, because there's so much noise that we have to really tone down and actually see where the separation is,
Yes.
have that, that proper understanding. And you just speaking to it right now, it talks to all of those things.
Yes.
It definitely talks to all those things. So what I do want to do, though, I do want to touch on just chapter 1 of Esther.
Yes.
Real quick, just so that the audience has a understanding. Now it came to pass in the days of Ahasuerus This is a Horus which reigned from India even unto Ethiopia over 127 provinces, 127 provinces.
Yep.
That in those days when the king Ahasuerus sat on the throne of his kingdom, which was in Shushan, the place, in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a feast unto all his princes and his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles and the princes of the provinces, being before him. So you already know this is a very powerful king.
Right.
127 provinces. Canada, we have less than 10. Like that's a lot of provinces.
And this was a time of our history where after all the prophets had prophesied and we didn't listen as a people, and we had to be very clear. We were warned several times that this would happen. We were warned that the king of Babylon would come into the nation. He would destroy the nation, and that he would completely obliterate what was standing before him. We were warned time and time again. So this is after that has happened. And this is one of those times where we have, you call him Ahasuerus, some pronounce him, there's so many different pronunciations, but we know it's this king of Persia.
Yeah, the king
that
of Persia.
came in after the king of Babylon. And so now this is the story that this is where it starts, that in the 3rd year of his reign, he made a great feast.
A great feast.
A great feast.
With all his princesses.
Yes. To all his princes and all his servants, the power of Persia and Media, the nobles, the princes of the provinces being before him. And as you said, 127 provinces that stretched from what they're describing as Ethiopia all the way to India. So this is an enormous region, which also as well too included Egypt. So we won't really get into the maps of today, because when we talk about Ethiopia, there were no borders in these times.
Yeah.
But there were certain regions. But this region of Ethiopia extended beyond Egypt. So you're all of that region, which included Israel, Syria, Lebanon, everything, even going down into India. Like it's a vast kingdom.
Huge, 127 provinces. It says it itself.
And that was broken down into 127 provinces, and also different cultures and languages and peoples, including all the nations that were in the land of Canaan and beyond. So, which included us as well too, as a people, the Israelite people. So it's very telling to really try to visualize the scope and the magnitude of this kingdom and what swayed the tide of it.
Even the power.
Yeah.
Even getting to the power, because a kingdom has a king. And so that domain is a huge, gigantic domain. The size of the armies, the organizational structure, all these things must be considered, even as we go through the story. But yeah, where were we? Verse 4 real quick.
Yes.
And so when he showed the riches of his glorious kingdom and the honor of his excellent majesty, many days, even 180 days, so 80 days.
And that's again too, it's not a 3-day thing, not 2 days, right?
180 days.
100, because the score is 40. So 104 score. So this is 180 days of feasting and celebration.
That's a lot of days.
Oh my goodness.
That's half the year. That's really half the 6 months.
Again, this is what we do here at the Israelite Nation. We bring it to light. The tapestry is so vast that you can start to see exactly what this is. So can you imagine feasting for 180 days? As you said, we're dealing with half of the year.
Everyone's well fed at this point, you know.
This is a magnanimous kingdom. It's not a small kingdom. And he proclaimed this. So this was a mighty king on the earth. Vast. Amazing. And let's continue the story.
Okay. And when these days were expired, the king made a feast unto all the people that were present in Shushan.
Right.
The palace both unto great and small, 7 days in the court of the garden of the king's palace, where were white, green, and blue hangings fastened with cords of fine linen and purple to silver, rings and pillars and marble. The beds were of gold and silver upon a pavement of red and blue and white and black marble. This guy, he loves his colors, isn't he?
Oh,
he has all the colors.
He included all the Israelite colors, as you can see, and then added their own. There's black and then there's green and all that included. But our colors are purple, red, white, and blue. The Israelite colors, obviously, as you can see. But green is not one of our colors.
That's not ours. We're not claiming that. And they gave them drink in vessel of gold, the vessels being diverse one from another, and royal wine in abundance, according to the state of the king. And the drinking was according to the law. None did compel, for so the king had appointed to all the officers of his house that they should be according to every man's pleasure. Also Vashti, the queen, made a feast for the women in the royal house which belonged to King Ahasuerus. On the 7th day, when the heart of the king was merry with wine, he commanded Mehuman, Biztha, Harbonah, Bigtha, and Abigtha, Zethar, and Carcass, and 7 chamberlains that serves in the presence of Ahasuerus the king, to bring Vashti the queen before the king, with the crown royal, to show the people and the princes her beauty, for she was fair to look at. So, geez, that's a lot of names. But you see that how well established that he is, the king. All the feasting, how many days they had for 6 months, and even feasting after that. And then now he wants to bring the queen to show her off. So it sets the tone. It lets you know what's going on, what they're about, what the time was like even in that era. And to continue, I think we're at verse 12.
Yeah.
But the queen Vashti refused to come at the king's commandment by his chamberlains. Therefore was the king very wroth, and his anger burned in him. Then the king said to the wise men, which knew that time, for so was the king's manner towards all the new law and judgment. And the next unto him was Cashin, Shethar, Admath, Tarshish, Meres, Marsina, and Memucan, the 7 princes of Persia and Media, which saw the king's face and which sat on the first in the kingdom. What shall we do unto the queen Vashti according to law, because she hath not performed the commandment of the king's Ahasuerus by the chamberlains? And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen hath not done wrong to the king only, but also to all the princes and to all the people that are in all the provinces of the king Ahasuerus.
So this is a very dangerous situation.
Very dangerous situation. I like how quick. Why is it dangerous for? Talk to the people.
Well, as you can see, the king of such a vast kingdom, which definitely you can't deny. In verse 9 it says, and also Vashti the queen made a feast for the women in the royal house, which belonged to Ahasuerus.
Yeah.
So although people might want to, we're living in such times nowadays where it's very volatile to discuss certain matters, but we should never be afraid to discuss these matters, because this is a serious thing. So the queen Vashti really had nothing to do in building the kingdom. In other words, she was there as people would describe it today as a trophy wife. And she really and truly didn't build the kingdom, but she was given place within the royal house. Really not much has changed in terms of her mentality and the mentality that we see prevalent today, because she refused the king. And that was like, whoa.
That's crazy.
What is happening here? You refused the king. And so the king's advisors, the 7 princes that he had to advise him in all matters in dealing with his kingdom, they saw down the road as to what could happen if such a thing is allowed to be prevalent within the kingdom.
It's influence.
Because the queen refused the summoning of the king. So they said, wow, something has to be done, because if the queen can do this, then this is going to disrupt the order of how things should be ran, should be within the kingdom. So what we're seeing here is it's definitely not any different than what a lot of people are seeing, because we're seeing nowadays where,
chaos.
It's definitely chaos.
Chaos, because you're talking about influence at this point.
Yes.
Vashti is equivalent at this point to like a Beyonce or something, And
Well, I'll probably say
I don't know if I'm jumping the gun, but
this is more like we can't really. I wouldn't really say a Beyonce, because we're looking at that as just like an entertainment industry. Let's go beyond that. If we're talking like for right now, the only really recognized kingdom that we can see is probably the royal family of England.
Queen Elizabeth.
Right. Well, she's no longer around.
Yeah.
So now the king. So if this king
Charles
commissions something and he has, I don't know, whoever he has there, and that person says, no, I'm not going to follow you, the king, that sends, it should send shockwaves in throughout the entire kingdom, to say, okay, well, wow, this would mean that, well, nobody has to listen to the principal person within the household. And if the principal person in the household were the princes, down to the, as they say here within the scriptures, down to the average, ordinary person, this will cause chaos throughout the kingdom, far-reaching.
It'll change the whole dynamic.
It'll change the whole dynamics, which
Yeah.
is what we've seen today. The whole dynamics have been changed. So with the whole dynamics being changed, the world is now flipped upside down, and we're living in very different circumstances.
And more information is being produced.
Yes.
So yeah, it's a serious rift. It causes spark. It
And
creates.
they were wise enough to see this back then. Why is it not considered today? Anyways, it's a
That's beyond
rhetorical
me, yeah.
question. But let's get more like into the scriptures here. Are we at verse 18, or did we pass that?
No, we're at 15.
Okay.
So what shall we do unto the Queen Vashti
I skipped ahead.
according to the law?
Yes.
Because she hath not performed the commandment of the king, Ahasuerus, by the chamberlains. And Memucan answered before the king and the princes, Vashti the queen hath not done wrong to the king only,
Yes.
but also to all the princesses and all the people that are all in the province of the king Ahasuerus. So it shows, like, she has set an example for the rest of the people. That's the
Yes.
leadership. For this deed of the queen shall come abroad unto all women, so that they shall despise their husbands in their eyes. When it shall be reported, the king Ahasuerus commanded Vashti the queen to be brought in before him, but she came not.
So to despise someone, it's deep rooted. It's not just a simple thing. So again, she is the wife of the king, and it's not no small matter. So if she's refusing, and it wasn't for malicious intent as to why he summoned her.
Yeah.
He summoned her so that he could show her off to the entire kingdom.
It's a good thing.
Which is a great, and because he is upholding her to be the most beautiful in all the kingdom. And if I am king of 127 provinces,
Yeah.
I am the great king Ahasuerus, the king, who reigns over all this. I want to show and display that I have the best. But she refused him. She despised him. And they're taking it as this is a great insult. So it was something that could not have been done. And likewise, verse 18, shall the ladies of Persia and Media say this day unto all the king's princes, which have heard of this deed of the queen, and thus shall there arise too much contempt and wrath. And I do believe that they were correct in what they were saying, because this is not a time when it would have been advisable for a woman to act in that way. Not in those days. Today,
It's a completely different system back then.
Yeah, a completely different
There was
system.
no like government or welfare or child support or police officers
Yeah,
to
because
that.
in her action, there are no women's rights, but she is the queen, so therefore she feels as if she has the right. But in essence, she's setting a chain reaction
Yeah.
that goes down to the simplest of people, and that would uproar the entire kingdom, because again, there were no women's rights, and at this time, women couldn't, well, they still really can't. You can't defend yourself.
Against a physical, tall, strong person, muscle mass. There's a lot of differences between men and women in that regard.
It's completely the way of thinking. It's not so much of somebody who is a wise woman, but this is more someone of a Jezebel type spirit, type person that has set themselves up to defy the orders of the king.
Yeah.
Like, what are you doing?
That's crazy. That's it's not going to lead to anything good. But I think wise is a good word to use. It's not wise to defy the king.
It's definitely not wise.
Verse 19. If it please the king, let there go a royal commandment from him, and let it be written among the laws of the Persians and the Medes, and it be not altered, that Vashti come no more before King Ahasuerus, and let the king give her royal estate unto another that is better than she. And when the king's decree, which he shall make, shall be published throughout all his empire, for it to be great, all the wives shall give to their husbands honor, both to great and small. And the saying pleased the king and the princes, and the kings did according to the word of Memucan. And he sent letters into all the king's provinces, and to every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, that every man should bear rule in his own house, and that it should be published according to the language of every people. That's power right there, man. That is some power. Because like sometimes like you think you can set a text out and today you can just delete it, right? But you put a decree out there or like a mass email, sometimes you can recall it back.
Right.
But a decree, the moment you throw it out there, it can't come back.
Right. So it has to be carefully thought out. It has to be carefully written out, and then it has to be sealed by the signet of the king. So it's sealed so that you know by what authority this is coming from. And it goes out to every language.
To every people.
Every people.
Well, every language is the crazy part too. So it's like
that's
instant translations and everything.
It's not just to us, but to every single language and people that is within the kingdom of this great king, this great earthly king Ahasuerus.
Amazing.
And, chapter 2. Are we going into chapter 2 or?
I think we might just summarize chapter 2.
Okay.
And go into
the reason why I do have to say that chapter 2 is very important.
Okay.
Is that there is a particular part in here in verse 5. It says here in verse 5 that now in Shushan the palace, there was a certain Jew.
Okay.
Whose name was Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite.
Okay, this is very important.
This is very important here.
Okay.
Yeah.
You want to touch on that some more, though?
Say again?
Want to touch on that some more?
Well, the reason why it's so important is because we have to know that
what's a Benjamite?
He's actually a Benjamite, but he's referred to as a Jew. Now, for us, this detail is extremely important because it shows us that we know as Israelites, this is not Israel 101, but we do have to lay the groundwork. There are 12 tribes of Israel. Our forefather Jacob, whose name was changed to Israel, had 12 sons. Now, the fourth son, there's Reuben, Simeon, Levi, Judah is the fourth son. Yeah. And from that fourth son is the tribes from which the kings would come from. Yes. So when we're talking about David, when we're talking about Hezekiah, Josiah, Solomon, all these were from the tribe of Judah, the most populous tribe. And the short form of Judah is Jew, according to what's here. But because it's the most populous tribe, they are referred to every single Israelite
as a Jew.
Whether you're from the tribe of Levi, from the tribe of Simeon, from the tribe of Naphtali, Asher, Gad, any other tribe. So they just basically, as a blanket statement, said that you're a Jew, right? And it's very important for us to understand that because it says here that Mordecai, the son of Jair, the son of Shimei, the son of Kish, a Benjamite. So he came from the last tribe of the sons. Well, the last tribe, because Dinah was from Judah, but because the tribes can only come through the males, Benjamin was the 12th son. So he's the last. And so Mordecai was from the tribe of Benjamin. But it's just like when we go to another country our passport says that you're a Canadian citizen, but obviously people look at you and think that, okay, well, they think Canadians are all typically white, but no.
With beards. Lumberjacks.
not all Canadians come from the city that we live in, Toronto. Not all Canadians come from this region. You have like 10, 12 different provinces in Canada, but not everyone comes from one province. It's like, that's the analogy.
Yeah.
That all Israelites come from Israel, but not all Israelites come from the tribe of Judah, which is, it should be known, but people nowadays, when all they think of is when you use this term Jew, that their mind goes to another place. But Mordecai was not a Jew. He was a Benjamite. But the people that are around him, you have to look at the scenario and the environment is that we are in the land of Persia. We're in that region. So the Persians, all they know is the populace of the Jews. All they know is the populace of David. They know the populace of Solomon. They know like the popularity of those famous kings. So the most popular tribe was the tribe of Judah. The tribe of Judah is referred to as the Jews, but it doesn't blanket statement to say that all these people come from one tribe. And that's the confusion of the matter, because what's out there right now is that everyone will say that, well, yeah, the Jews. And then they throw in something else called Jewish. But you know what I mean? Yeah. All these things are they're not consistent with the scriptures. So that we know that Mordecai was a Benjamite. And so when you start to ask, well, people always want to ask, well, where are the other tribes? You know, where are these missing 10 tribes or 11 tribes or whatever it is they're trying to come up with? Because you do have to be able to sift through all of this. But all of that is not really necessary because it's written here in black and white.
Exactly. You know, I could appreciate the lineage as well, how it goes through that, because it lets you know Benjamin comes from Jacob, who was surnamed Israel, whose father was Isaac, and whose father was Abraham.
Yes.
And Abraham came from the line of Shem.
Right. So, and again, it's why it's so important that we always have to be specific. When God says that he's the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, we understand which God that this is, because there's no confusion. Because people confuse the matter when they say God in general, and it's a big, major confusion. That's why you have to be specific, because if you identify these three men, you know which God that sent his angels to appear unto these men and to change this particular man's name from Jacob to Israel. So then we know we're not talking about a piece of land, but we're actually talking about
a people.
A people. And that's very important to know.
Beautiful, well said. And I just want to hit verse 6 just to provide some context.
Yes.
So Mordecai, who had been carried away from Jerusalem.
Right.
So we know where he's coming from.
Right.
With the
so this is a Benjamite that lived within the region of Jerusalem, within the capital city of the Israelites. And a lot of people get confused again because they think that, well, this is the city where the Jews were, that there couldn't have been any other tribe there. I'm willing to bet that every single tribe was represented in the land of Jerusalem, in the region of Jerusalem, in the capital city. Because who wouldn't want to be? Who wouldn't want to go to the capital city?
Who doesn't want to go to
like,
Toronto?
you have every representation there. So it just goes to show you, well, here's a Benjamite that was within Jerusalem. Yeah. So they weren't all quote unquote Jews. They weren't all from the tribe of Judah dwelling in Jerusalem, because here we have a Benjamite named Mordecai.
100%. That has to be clear.
And his cousin slash niece, somebody who he raised, her name was
Esther. Or Hadassah.
Hadassah. Okay, this is a very interesting story, but what we're doing is we're exposing the story of what they call Purim. We're exposing it.
Exactly. So who had been carried away from Jerusalem.
With the captivity.
Exactly, which had been carried away with Jehoiakim, king of Judah, whom Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, had carried away. Right. And he brought up Hadassah, that is Esther, his uncle's daughter, for she had neither father nor mother, and the maid was fair and beautiful, who Mordecai, when her father and mother were dead, took for his own daughter.
Right.
So Mordecai showed up, Mordecai was a good uncle.
This is very interesting because it makes it seem like such a pleasantry among the captivity. But these were you were taken as a slave. You were a conquered people.
Yeah.
And what happened to your kingdom, the place that you lived in, the king of Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, came with forces and with army and with might, and he killed a lot of people. That's just basically what it is. He killed the majority of your people, and Mordecai and Esther or Hadassah was amongst those people that were captured and brought to Babylon. So it's not really such a nice, pretty picture. Like, you are a conquered people. The reason why you were conquered is because your kings and your people refused to obey the voice of the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, in keeping his laws, his statutes, and his commandments.
And to that earlier point where we were talking about, how Vashti was being rude to the king, you look in the earlier books where it talks about the relationship of the people, the Israelites,
Yes.
and the God of Israel. It describes it as a marriage.
Yes.
And the God of Israel being the husbandman sets the foundation for that relationship.
Yeah.
And you see that. And as humans, we're made in the God of Israel's, image and likeness. We mimic that kind of relationship with what we have here on earth, because that's supposed to be perfection.
Right.
So you see how it all connects together.
It
and
connects
then
1,000% because there is an order.
There's an order.
And our king is the God of Israel. He is married unto us.
Right. Our king is the God of Israel. So imagine if we were behaving like Vashti,
So what was the advice that that Ahasuerus' counselors said to him in dealing with Vashti? They said, look, don't allow her to be brought before us anymore. So you can just see the God of Israel, I don't want your people to appear before me anymore. Like, I'm done with you as a people. And that's exactly what he did to us.
That's part of our story.
It's part of our story.
And
we can no longer appear before the God of Israel. We have to beg and we have to plead to ask for his mercy, just for him to give us a little bit.
Exactly. It's a very important,
And because he made a covenant, and it wasn't like the people, the Israelites made that covenant. That covenant was made with Abraham, with Isaac, and with Jacob.
It's deep.
They made that. God made that covenant with them, and we're just benefiting from that. The covenant has never been broken, and the covenant will never go away. But He would always be there to remind us what it takes for us to get back to Him. But in that same situation, you have an earthly king and an earthly queen who refused the commandment of her king, and the advice was, don't bring her around here anymore. Just keep her over there. We don't need your services anymore. We don't need you anymore. Wow, that's like, phew.
Crazy.
Oh boy, oh boy. But
So I guess we're going to summarize chapter 2 and go into the next chapter. But just to give you the rest of the story. So the king is looking for a replacement for Vashti at this point, because he needs someone that complements him. He needs to make sure that everything is ordered, that he's a good example to the people and all the princes and all the people from whatever range or socioeconomic status that they come from. That they set the tone.
Yes.
And in that process, he goes on a long, wide search from all the virgins through all the provinces in the kingdom of Persia.
127 provinces.
That's a lot of provinces. Gathered all the prettiest, all the fair and beautiful women, got them all together. And he was diligently searching for his next queen.
Right.
So you see the process. He's searching. He's like, this has to be a really beautiful woman. She has to be kind, perfect in the king's eyes, to the king's liking. That's a lot of power, just to do all that, put that all together. And then lo and behold, Esther.
Yes.
Esther came into the scene. Everyone was like, he's like, next, get nine. Like, you're not that pretty. When his eyes laid upon Esther, or Hadassah, he was mesmerized, captivated by her beauty. And he's like, you know what?
And that's just the outward appearance.
No, that's just the outward appearance.
That was just the outward appearance that he was captivated by. But also he was captivated by her demeanor, her personality, the person that she was on the inside. Because we can't really get into all the details, but she didn't appear like all the other because they were maidens too. Very clear that the king needed to have a virgin queen. Like, this is very important. But it wasn't just the physical attributes, but also the attributes of the inside of this person really shown and really made the determining factor. And of all the women, all the maidens in the kingdom, he chose this Benjamite woman to be his queen. So these are the parts of the story that no one talks about, that no one discusses. And because the way she was raised and who she was, this is the selection that was made. And it's a very fascinating story once you do get to the bottom of all of this. But it's something for us to take notice of, that in this time, we are in the land of our captivity. There's really, within these 10 chapters, you don't really see an interaction with the God of Israel. You don't.
Yeah.
There's really not that interaction. But what's really highlighted is the character of the people, the character of Mordecai and the character of Esther, Hadassah, really comes to the surface, because we as a people, the only thing that really certifies us is the belief in our God. That our God, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, is the God that will save us from the situations that we are in. And nowhere you can really see that in this story, because this is not a situation in a story where the hand of the God of Israel is shown in such a way like in Passover. It's not the Passover story, but this is a story that's nestled in there to show our faith as a people. Like, once you have that strong foundation as to who you are, the basis of who you are, that fasting and prayer are the most expressive things that you can do as an Israelite, to actually bring you to that point where you have to put everything into the hand of the God of Israel. And the only way you can do that is through fasting and prayer.
Exactly.
Fasting and prayer, because we were put in a situation where our backs were against the wall.
Yeah.
Our backs were against the wall. We were going to be wiped out as a people. We only had 12 months from Adar all the way back to Nisan. We had it was commissioned. It went out by the king. Like, there's so much within this story that has to be known, that people don't realize just how important it is. But as you said, it is a simple story. It's a story of our faith as a people. But when people take it to another area, it's like, what are you doing?
They're adding to it, mixing it up. Even before we touch on that real quick, 'cause I just wanted to quickly highlight just the verses for Esther.
Yep.
So verse 15. Now when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken her for his daughter, was come to go in unto the king, she required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed, and Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her.
Right.
So Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house, royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign.
Interesting.
And the king loved Esther. So not even like he loved her at this point.
Above
all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her, upon her head, and made her queen instead of Vashti.
Right. So you see that. Again, for those who don't know, like, I'm quite sure she didn't have truckloads of makeup on and foundation and all these things. I'm quite sure she didn't have lashes and all those things that that people think is actually aesthetically pleasing. But to the king, what was aesthetically pleasing was just her.
The natural beauty.
The natural beauty of who she was. She didn't have to have all these additives and ingredients and all these things that, all the fluff. I'm quite sure she didn't have a BBL or anything like that.
Oh, man.
I'm quite sure. Because I don't think in this day and age those things were needed and required. It was just her.
Authentic.
And her authentic, natural self, as most men prefer women. I don't know, but we're living in certain times where they think all these things are needed. But it says, and this is very very interesting, and I do like to read this verse. Now, when the turn of Esther, the daughter of Abihail, the uncle of Mordecai, who had taken for her his daughter, was come to go unto the king, she required nothing but what Haggai, the king's chamberlain, the keeper of the women, appointed, and Esther obtained favor in the sight of all them that looked upon her. And she didn't even speak a word.
Yeah.
Just that.
Just showed up.
Just showed up.
Got that.
So
yeah.
Esther was taken unto King Ahasuerus into his house royal in the 10th month, which is the month Tebeth, in the 7th year of his reign. These are all very interesting things. And the king loved Esther above all the women, and she obtained grace and favor in his sight more than all the virgins, so that he set the royal crown upon her head and made her queen instead of Vashti. And then the king made a great feast unto all the princes and the servants, even Esther's feast. And he made a release to the province and gave gifts according to the state of the king. So this is all an interesting setup. Very interesting to see how it played out from this Israelite child from the tribe of Benjamin.
It's crazy. But I know we mentioned before how, again, the world would take things, they would add to it, they would restructure it. And I mentioned, the Kabbalah, for an example. And so like there's a lot going on, especially when you're having these conversations with people that are outside the nation. And we read the story just now. We read, one chapter and a bit of the other chapter just to show you what's going on and the foundation of Purim and how it came to be. But for those of you that don't know, in terms of the Kabbalah, if you haven't seen it before, I encourage you to go, do your own research and take a look into it. When you type in Kabbalah into Google, you would see this image that has these little circles. Almost like a tree, almost like a tree. It's always a tree. It's referred to sometimes as a tree of life. Yeah. And each one of those little, what's is called a sephirot, each one of those represents something, right? Okay. And what they would do outside in the world is they would apply that to their readings, their scriptures, their text. And then this is where all the interpretation and the connection and the justifications and all these other written documents come from. So it creates so much noise and layers on top of simple Bible conversations, Bible stories. Like we didn't need any extra text. It was clear, it was plain what was going on.
You would think, right?
Yeah, you would think. But then you have, Keter, you have Koklaman, you have Binah, Da'at, Chest, Gerura, all these names to describe each portion of the Kabbalah or the tree of life.
I'm having a hard enough time just speaking English alone.
I don't know. So it leads you to some, what's going on here? Where is all these extra meanings coming from? And why is it needed? Where is the origin of this tree of life? Right. And these other, why does it exist? It's very interesting. What do you think about all that noise and all that extra stuff?
You know me anyway.
Oh yeah, isn't it? We love clarity.
I think it's all very interesting. But because again, I am an Israelite, a practicing Israelite, and have been for a very long time. I really and truly don't have need for mysticism. I don't have need for all of these ingredients, so to speak, in order to try and. I'm not searching to find spirituality. I'm not searching to find mysticism. That's really not my forte. So when I come across it, I find it very interesting. I do. The reason being, because I have to refer back to the scriptures. Because it's clear in Deuteronomy 18. Yeah. Right. It says here, from the 9th verse, when thou art come into the land which the Lord thy God giveth thee, thou shalt not learn after the abominations of those nations. There shall not be found among you any that maketh his son or daughter to pass through the fire, or that useth divination, or an observer of times, or an enchanter, or a witch, or a charmer, or a consulter with familiar spirits, or a wizard, or a necromancer. For all these things are an abomination unto the Lord. And because these abominations the Lord thy God does drive them out from before thee, thou shalt be perfect for the Lord thy God. For these nations which thou shalt possess hearken unto observers of times, unto diviners. But as for thee, the Lord thy God hath not suffered thee to do so. So, again, it's confusing for me. I'm confused because you're supposed to be the example as to what we look towards. But if you have a breakdown, and this is what's found in the Kabbalah, these 10 points.
Let me read the definition. It says a mystical diagram consisting of 10 seraphs believed to be divine emanation through which God interacts with the world.
Okay, and again, this is why I always stress.
Which God are you talking about?
Which God are you talking about?
You know, which God are you talking about?
Yeah, like in that sentence, like, please, can you read that again?
A mystical,
right?
Already problematic. A mystical, you're going into the wizards, all that other stuff. A diagram consisting of 10 sephirots, believed to be divine emanations.
Believed to be divine emanations of
through which God interacts with the world.
Through which God interacts
with the world.
Like, which God is in need of those particular things in order to interact with the world? So we know that the God in this Bible,
the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob,
the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, he's not interacting with the world. He's interacting with his people. So if you find a God that wants to interact with the world, then we're not talking about the same God. Because one God proclaims himself to be the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, and commands his people not to indulge in such activities. But then at the other page, or on the internet, or on everywhere else, because this is not something new.
It's not, no.
This Kabbalah is not something new. It's not recently invented. This is something from antiquity, so they say. So from antiquity, this particular God, in order for him to interact with the world, you're going to need these 10 principles, these 10 things, these 10,
seraphs?
These 10 seraphs, in order to communicate with this God.
You know, that's a really good, powerful point, because
it's not identifying the God of Israel.
Yes.
Because it would be a complete, it would expose.
It would expose who they are. Because spirituality is communication. You know, every little God or any spirit, they have a form of how they like to communicate.
Right.
They have specific instructions of what you have to do as a follower to get their attention.
Right.
And when you fulfill these things, carry out these duties, fulfill these processes or rituals, you would get a result according to that God.
And doesn't that sound like familiar spirits?
100%. You just read those things.
It sounds like you're calling upon a quote-unquote God in order to communicate and facilitate this thing that you are trying to accomplish. But in our scriptures, our God is saying that I have not suffered. Verse 14, for these nations which thou shalt possess hearkened unto observers of times and unto diviners. But as for thee, speaking as to you, as for thee, children of Israel, the Lord thy God has not suffered thee so to do. He's not suffered for us to do those things. Like, he doesn't want us to go out of our way to do these things and get into those particular things, because he wants us to put our attention to him. He will provide. And it's a completely different God that we're seeing that those people had channeled into. A completely different God.
Completely different.
Right.
Super different.
When they tie these things into the story, you can easily be carried away because somebody is coming with the authority of a name, the authority of a title. And when you actually read for yourself, that's why this is our book. This is our book of life. We have to go within the pages of this book to figure out exactly how we're going to navigate life.
Because it builds on it. It's like, it's not, you don't need like an extra manual to
Right.
It builds on it. It's all
Right.
right there for you to read and to learn about. But just even add to your point though, because it's called the Kabbalah tree of life.
Right.
And we notice that they have the habit of taking things from the Bible and adding and taking things, you know. So you have the tree of life and the tree of good and evil in the beginning in Genesis.
Right.
And you see how they take it, they add and create their own thing to it, twist it, turn it around, transform it, and now create a whole different belief system for a different God. Like, it's crazy. And it's pattern.
Yeah.
They do this all the time.
And what's so interesting about it is that they call it the tree of life. And from our reading of the scripture, it might be a little slightly off. We know that there's a tree of knowledge of good and evil, and then there's also the tree of life. So if you have done away with the tree of knowledge of good and evil, and you see this as the tree of life, I mean, where else are you going to find such a phrase, the tree of life, other than within the scriptures?
Exactly.
And if you're supposed to be connected to those people, well, this tree of life it's really not the tree of life, but what that is, that's knowledge of good and evil. More so evil than good, but it's so you can see how there is such a thin line.
Disguise.
Oh, it's disguised, very intricate. It's
Very
an intricate disguise. And again, even plays into the fact of during that time, they like to indulge in disguising themselves at that particular time of year when they celebrate Purim. They're disguised. Like, why would you need a disguise? Why would you have to like change things up and appear as something that you're not? Like, we discussed a little bit earlier that within the scriptures, whenever somebody had to disguise themselves, it was never anything positive. It was not a good thing. We had kings that disguised themselves, went into battle, and the king was dealt with in a severe way.
Saul disguised himself.
We had Saul who disguised himself so that he can find someone with a familiar spirit. That's nothing positive, because of all the things that Saul did in his lifetime, the worst thing that he could have done was consult a familiar spirit. That was the absolute worst thing that he could have done as an Israelite. I'm just thinking, he was a Benjamin.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. He's a Benjamin.
That's so interesting. Saul was a Benjamite. Mordecai a Benjamite. Hadassah / Esther a Benjamite. Very interesting. I have really never really took notice of that before. But yeah, it was never a positive thing to disguise oneself within the scriptures. And we can see that the results that came about from it. But here we have some more disguises being pronounced. But the subject matter that we're dealing with is Purim Exposed.
Yeah.
So for those folks who were disguising themselves, thinking that they are participating in Purim, I guess things have been exposed in such a way.
Exactly.
Because this is all very interesting. We've learned a lot. We've gathered a lot today.
And just for those that are out there in Cyberland, this is it's an educational conversation, and always just the question of why do you do what you do?
Yes.
I love that question so much, because when you ask that question and you actually have the courage to dive in deep, you realize you don't know why you do what you do.
Right.
You just do it because of tradition, or you just do it because you're moved by that spirit, which is a whole other conversation for another day. But it's an important question to ask yourself. Like, do you really believe what you believe in, and why do you do those things?
Indeed.
And if you have the courage to actually, go into and see it, a lot of the things you realize would connect back to the mysticism, the Europe, the Kabbalah, and all these other weird
And
things.
the 18th century.
In the 18th century, it's very interesting, and there's no like criticism. It's just an investigation.
It's an investigation and an observation that we find very interesting for us to observe, because, like I said, like for the past 30 odd years, I've been invested in being who I am in terms of just following who you are.
Wholeheartedly. Not
And
like
so
in and
because
out.
of that, you kind of like cocoon yourself against the outside world. So when you do have to interact with the outside world and you see terms like Passover and Ethanim and Purim and things like that being utilized, it makes you wonder, okay, well, where do you get that from? Well, let me see. How does that relate to me? And then when you see the two, like when you compare the two, you're not even comparing apples to apples. You're comparing apples to a completely unknown fruit. You know, and it's like, geez, what tree did that fruit fall from?
And just to your point, because to those that look like you and I, like there's so many things out there that people want to dabble in.
Yes.
But it won't be good for people like you and I. The rest of the world can do those things. They would get their results. It would work for them, and no shame to them. If it's working for you, do what you got to do.
That is such a very important point that you made, Ezekiel.
That's why there's no criticize over here.
No.
It's working for you. It's exalted you to reach certain levels of power. So like, again, it's working.
That is such an important part for you to actually illustrate, because even this here, when we're dealing with this story again too, it's so important because the enemy of our people, the observation that he made is he said something. Where is he here?
Chapter 3, Haman?
Haman.
Yes. So
he made a very interesting point. In order to get the decree, where am I looking at? Yes, here it is. He made a very interesting point. And what he said is this, in chapter 3, verse 8, when he had engineered this decree to go out, he said in verse 8, "And Haman said unto King Ahasuerus, There is a certain people scattered abroad and dispersed among the people in all the provinces of thy kingdom, and their laws are diverse from all people, neither keep they the king's laws. Therefore it is not for the king's profit to suffer them."
Suffer them.
Here we have that, suffer them again. But he's saying that there's a people in your kingdom, and their laws are diverse. They do things different from all other people. So there's that recognition. And that's what he identified. In order to get rid of Mordecai, it wasn't just enough to get rid of Mordecai, but we need to get rid of all the people that are like Mordecai, who don't want to bow down, not to the king, because even if it was the king, they wouldn't have bowed down, but
to him,
Haman.
That is crazy.
That is something else. So what identified us was the fact that our laws, our statutes, and our commandments were different from everyone else.
Should we read those earlier verses just to get in the context?
Sure.
Yeah. Okay. No worries.
Because it's all part of the story, which makes it so
story.
fascinating.
I
but again, too, it's a simple story.
It is a simple story, and I like how you even touch on the humanity of these. These are human beings. You know? So you can imagine Haman with all that power and notoriety. Like, what does it do to a person's mindset? I deserve praise. I deserve to be bowed down to. I deserve all these likes on Instagram and followers. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's similar. But
very much so.
Let's get to it here. After these things, so chapter 3, verse 1. After these things did King Ahasuerus promote Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, and advance him and set his seat above all the princes that were with him. And all the king's servants that were in the king's gate bowed and reverenced Haman, for the king had so commanded concerning him. But Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence. And there's that word reverence, respect. Then the king's servants, which were in the king's gate, said unto Mordecai, Why transgressed thou the king's commandment? Now it came to pass, when they spoke daily unto him, and he hearkened not unto them, that they told Haman to see whether Mordecai's matters would stand, for he had told them that he was a Jew.
Yeah.
I like that. It's like, yo, what you guys doing? I'm a Jew. What do you mean? I can't be doing these things.
Yeah.
I like Mordecai understands the president.
Mm-hmm.
And when Haman saw that Mordecai bowed not, nor did him reverence, then was Haman full of wrath.
Mm-hmm.
And he sought scorn to lay hands on Mordecai alone, for they had showed him the people of Mordecai. Wherefore Haman sought to destroy all the Jews that were throughout the whole kingdom of Ahasuerus, even the people of Mordecai.
Right.
And so in the first month, that is the month Nisan, in the 12th year of King Ahasuerus, they cast pur, that is the lot, before Haman from day to day, and from month to month, to the 12th month, that is the month Adar.
Mm-hmm. Very interesting, isn't that?
Yeah, it is interesting.
It's very interesting when we start to pull back and see all the interesting attributes that make up this story. And it is the story of our people. You know, what do we do as a people in captivity when we've been taken captive? Do we abandon our culture? Do we abandon that which we were raised upon, the principles that we were raised upon? Although that's what got us into the position of being taken captives, was the disobedience to our God. We know that. What else do we have? Like, how else do we be ourselves? How else? Like, what are we now?
Yeah.
That doesn't take away from the fact that you are an Israelite. So as an Israelite, you're obligated to adhere to the laws, the statutes, and the commandments. Because if you don't, you start to become something that you are not.
Mm-hmm.
And that is being absorbed by these other cultures and these other forces that are around you. Like, where is your identity? Where is your culture? Where are you in this whole matter?
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the story is about. Because we're in the land of our captivity, away from our land, our own land of Israel, away from our culture. But so now you're forced into a situation like, what do? You have to continue to be who you are amongst all of this.
No, to your point, like, it goes to show you how powerful culture is.
Yes.
You know, it's a way of life.
It is a way of
And
life.
if you collectively do it with a set of people, it changes everything. It changes your mindset, it changes your physiology, it changes your social interactions, your psychology. It's deep. So imagine, like, even here at the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, as Israelites, we have our culture that's predicated on the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob's laws, statutes, and commandments. And it just so happens to build, friendship and community and family and brotherhood amongst one another when we congregate, when we pray with one another, etc.
Yeah.
So all those things just happen to be very great things, and you can go into the science of it too. It still just happens to be really, really good things, even the circumcision and all those things.
And that's what's lost a lot of times when people decide to read the Bible. You read the Bible and it's like it's just a story. This is more than just a story. This is the story of a people and their culture and what made them so different, what made them so unique. Like, you can see that it comes out that they were diverse. The laws that these people live by, they're diverse from all the people. So it's not saying that, there's something wrong with it. It's just saying that other people are not going to like what you're doing. But what you're doing was commissioned by the greatest God of all.
Which trumps all of the commissions.
which trumps everything else. Like, it's not a simple matter. So you can see now when your people have walked away from that and then called themselves Gentiles and lived their life as Gentiles. So we are not Gentiles. So therefore, we are not looking at the story as an outsider. This is not a third-party story for us. We are
This
in
our
there,
history,
side by side with Mordecai, side by side, walking step by step with Hadassah. So we know what it feels like to be alienated from everyone else, because that was the situation. No one knew Esther's identity, her culture, and her people. No one knew because her uncle advised her not to. Don't come out and tell people that, yeah, this is who I am, because we don't know. This, you got to read the room.
It's uncharted territory, yeah.
Read the room when you get in there and be humble about it. Now, had she had come out and said, yeah, if she started beating her chest and saying, this is who I am, like, the story would have taken a completely different, she probably wouldn't have been able to have that audience.
Probably
with
wouldn't
the
be
king.
10 chapters.
Right, because the simplicity, the humility of who she was, and the wisdom in which she displayed herself, that's what made her different from every single virgin of all the provinces and this whole kingdom had displayed themselves. So you can see, again, the wisdom, the understanding, the humility of being an Israelite. Like, we glean so much from the examples of this story as to how we should conduct ourselves. And when the hour that is needed, when that time comes where our back is against the wall, the thing that we have to do as Israelites is fast and pray. It's really quite simple, like the story.
I've been saying the same thing. So where are we? Verse 9. So if it please the king, let it be written that they may be destroyed, and I will pay 10,000 talents of silver to the hands of those that have the charge of the business, to bring it into the king's treasuries. And the king took his ring from his hand and gave it to Haman, the son of Hammedatha, the Agagite, the Jews' enemy. And the king said unto Haman, the silver is given to thee, the people also to do with them as it seemeth good to thee. Then were the king's scribe called on the 13th day of the first month, and there was written according to all that Haman had commanded unto the king's lieutenants and to the governors that were over every province, and to the rulers of every people of every province according to the writing thereof, and to every people after their language, to the name of King Ahasuerus was it written and sealed with the king's ring. And the letters were sent by post into all the king's provinces, to destroy, to kill, and to cause to perish all the Jews, both young and old, little children and women, in the one day, even upon the 13th day of the 12th month, which is the month Adar, and to take the spoils of them for a prey. The copy of writing for a commandment to be given to every province was published unto all people, that they should be ready against that day. The post went out, being hastened by the king's commandment, and a decree was given to Shushan the palace, and the king and Haman sat down to drink, but the city Shushan was perplexed. Interesting.
Indeed. Because this is sheer pandemonium that's going out.
Exactly.
This is nothing like that. Can you imagine that? Like people being singled out. It's very confusing that only those people that were the people of Mordecai, only the Israelites were singled out to be executed.
They got a death note.
Yeah. And this is coming directly from the king. Such power, such influence that Haman had. And here you have it. The queen is one of those people. So the city Shushan, the capital city that, of the Persians at that particular time, because they must have had a lot of captives, a lot of our people there, they were perplexed. But yet here you have the king and Haman, they're sitting, they're drinking and feasting.
Yeah.
But yet the city is in uproar. And here you have it. I mean, we're going through this story, and it's hard to sort of like just take things into just a blanket statement and say, well, this is the story in general, because all these little details.
They matter a lot.
Yeah, they matter a lot that make up the story. And again, here you have it. You're not finding the God of Israel. There's no angels being sent down. There's no messengers. But because of who they are as a people, this is how we are supposed to be raised as Israelite people. Our greatest attribute is the fact that we can pray to our God. We can stretch forth our hands in a time of trouble, in a time of need, and when things get really bad, such as this, you fast and you pray, and then what you do is you leave it in the hands of the God of Israel. Which is, again, that's such a prevailing factor in this story, That, yeah, you do what you can, and then you leave it in the hands of the God of Israel.
You know, the master teacher always says, hope for the best, prepare for the worst, put the best in the God of Israel's hands.
Let the God of Israel do the rest.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what we live by. So but it doesn't take away from the fact that day to day, it's a day-to-day grind. Because you have to maintain who you are. You have to, and that's what this is. Like they're not, you know, like,
it's their culture.
no, they're not going to, there's no other alternative.
Yeah. There's no other alternative.
There's not another
The law is the law.
alternative. There's just no other way to do it. We'll continue to be who we are in the land of our captivity. Continue to keep the laws, the statutes, and the commandments that were given to us, because it's part of who we are. It's our culture. And once you can come into that understanding, it's not something you just give up. Like I hear people say that, you know, they started off being an Israelite, and then something happens now, I'm no longer an Israelite.
Doesn't work that way. But even to your point, and you can look at the culture. So when Mordecai perceived all that was done, Mordecai rent his clothes and put on sackcloth with ashes, and went out into the midst of the city and cried with a loud and bitter cry, and came even before the king's gate, for none might enter into the king's gate clothed with sackcloth.
Right.
So he's going to the extreme ends to let people know, you know, how it's impacting him. And in every province, whithersoever the king's commandment and his decree came, there was great mourning among the Jews, and fasting and weeping and wailing, and many lay in sackcloth and ashes. So Esther's maids and her chamberlains came and told it her. Then was the queen exceedingly grieved, and she sent remnant to clothe Mordecai and to take away his sackcloth from him, but he received it not. Then called Esther for Hattach, one of the king's chamberlains, who he made appointed to attend upon her, and gave him a commandment to Mordecai to know what it was and why it was. So Hash went to Mordecai into the streets of the city, which was before the king's gate, and Mordecai told him of all that had happened unto him, and of the sum of the money that Haman had promised to pay to the king's treasuries for the Jews to destroy them. So that's crazy. So you see how you know it's changed everything. All the brethren across all the provinces are all doing the same thing.
Yes.
With the sackcloth and the ashes and the clothing, and even the fasting and the praying, immediately by instinct.
Well, you think of it, because again, what are you going to do? Your back is against the wall. Here, as a nation of people, it's interesting how you see the word when for the Jews, but these are all Israelites. So again, in general, the blanket statement is to call the Israelites Jews, but every single one of them, they were all Israelites. That was the nationality. And so verse 8, and he also gave them the copy of the writing for the decree which was given at Shushan, to destroy them, to show it unto Esther, and to declare it unto her, and to charge her that she should come unto the king to make supplication unto him, and to make a request before him for her people. So, you know, it's not a simple matter. Esther is thinking, you know what, hey, maybe she thought, hey, I'm good, I'm in the palace.
She did think that, innit?
Maybe that was the situation. Maybe that's what she thought.
And then you read verse 13.
Yeah.
Look what Mordecai said. Then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews.
Right.
For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place.
Right.
But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed, and who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this?
Right.
Then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer: Go gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish.
Yes.
So Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. So one thing that comes up to me real quick, because the fasting and the praying, we mentioned that before, but the fasting and the praying is 3 days straight. There's no break at nighttime like you see in other places, you know what I'm saying? So you see how the scriptures is very clear on how a fast is carried out.
Yep.
And we talk about this is the age of information, so everyone's doing all sorts of fasting here, there, thinking they're getting a result.
Right.
But not according to the scriptures.
Not according to the scriptures. Again, too, you see a lot of these things that we did as a people, how it's taken up by other nations, and then other nations want to come back to you and tell you how things should be done.
Which is crazy.
Yeah.
That's crazy, you know?
Very much so. Which is why, again, it's always so important for us to be specific. Specific in the name of the God that we call upon. Specific in the things that we do. Because everything that we do, there's an order to it. It's not just a, haphazard way of doing things. It has to be specific.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to gain the attention and the focus of the God that you're calling upon, you have to go according to what He taught you. Don't stray away from it, and don't try to bring your own new way of doing things into it.
Yeah.
It's not that way. The culture is so clear. But you can see from the story, as the story is building up, that there might have been some thinking of, you know what, like she said, I can't go unless the king puts forth the golden scepter. But it's like Mordecai is telling her, look,
people are in trouble, man.
your people are in trouble. And don't think that just because you are residing in the palace that this is not going to affect you as well too, because it will come out and people will start to ask, because they see the interaction between you and Mordecai and all these things that are going. So eventually it's going to get to the point where, well, who are you? And she's going to say, I'm of these people. And then the king's wrath and his anger will flourish once again. And not only will all the Israelites be done in, but she's going to be done in as well too, at that set time. So even in her wisdom, what she said that in verse 16, go gather all the, I'm going to say Israelites. Go gather all the Israelites that are present in Shushan, and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also, very important.
Night or day,
Yeah, night or day.
Because
so
some
it's
places,
not a situation where you fast and then at sunset you have a great feast. No, you're fasting, you're not eating for 3 days, night or day. I also, and my maidens will fast likewise, and so will I go into the king. So I'm going to prepare myself to go into the king. And this is not the God of Israel, but this is the earthly king at the present. I will go in unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. Mm-hmm. If I die, I die. So she's the faith that she's placing within herself, and more importantly, in your fasting and praying. Who are you fasting to? Who are you praying to during that time?
Very important question.
Yeah,
how are you fasting as well?
This is not just for me, but this is the entire weight of my nation, the entire weight of my people. I am doing this. The maidens that are around me are doing the same. Go out and tell the people to do all this, because you need all of that. You need to be in one accord.
Yeah.
Before she's going into the king. Verse 17, so Mordecai went his way and did according to all that Esther had commanded him. So now they're both on the same page.
Unity.
Yeah, they're both on the same page.
Yeah.
And this is what this is what she's going into there with. And the only way that she knows to do this, and Mordecai knows to do this, is because these are the children of Israel. And that's what the children of Israel do. They fast and they pray.
And the world wouldn't know that unless they actually start from the beginning of the book and work their way towards, the New Testament. Mm-hmm. But nowadays, most people just hop into the New Testament and then, Jesus there, Jesus this, Jesus everything.
These are the same people that Jesus was. He came out of these same people. This is not an isolated story. These are not isolated instances.
It's the same culture.
And that's the impression that you get from people when they want to talk to you about, for example, our brother Jesus. the Christ,
Mhm.
as if he's just like an average, everyday one of them. He was an average, everyday one of them. There is a backstory to who he is.
Mhm.
And unless you know that backstory, you actually don't know him. Like, you don't know. Like, people always want to throw that out there, like Jesus. Like,
Have you found Jesus yet?
yeah, like, whoa, like, where are you going?
That's
Do you
crazy.
even know who Jesus was? Like, most people don't.
He died for our sins.
What sins?
Yeah.
Like, again, the backstory is so important, and that's why when we say we're, Purim exposed, you need to know the backstory
Context.
as to what it is, because it's gotten to a point now where there's this thing called Purim is beyond. Like, we acknowledge Purim, but in no way, shape, or form do we place it above Passover that happens in the first month, our holy month of Nisan that's mentioned here, which is the same month of Abib. We don't place it above the 7th month, which is the month of Ethanim, which is our high holy month. But we do acknowledge that it's there.
Mhm.
The reason being is because Purim was never initiated or was never given as a law, a statute, or commandment by the God of Israel. So you have to be very careful. Like, it's there as an acknowledgement. We know that it took place and we know that it's there, but it's not highlighted in such a way, you were wearing costumes and masks and getting drunk and, like doing all these sort of things that are associated with it. We understand what took place.
And we know
But-
why we do it.
Right. A greater deliverance for our people took place in the month of Abib. It's so ironic that it says that on the 14th day, some people might not even notice that the 14th day of the first month is mentioned in here, which is the day before Passover.
Yes.
So it's all interesting that all these things are there, but people wouldn't understand that. For us, it jumps out of the page, like it just jumps out, and then you see, wow, the 14th day of the first month of Abib. That's Passover. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's there in the story, but people won't recognize it. They'll just read a story. They won't read, wow, there are 7. He did this in the 7th year of his reign. Like, this is when that decree went out. Like, it's like, wow, people don't know these things, but 7
is perfection.
Is very important to us. And so here you have it. Like, it jumps out that they fasted and they prayed. Like, wow, this is our culture.
3 days and
Fasting
3
and praying
nights.
is part of our culture. When things get to the point in your life that you really and truly need help, like, what are you going to do? Because the God of Israel, he's not sending, you don't see, or like we read stories of our great forefathers, and you see where angels appeared unto them. So what do you do when there's no angels appearing unto you? You can't be like everyone else that said, oh, and God spoke to me last night.
It was bizarre. And they just had like a crab sandwich the night before. A couple hours ago.
Right. It's very clear and very concise on the things that you have to do, because here we are in 2025. The God of Israel is not showing, like, angels are not, showing up and appearing unto people. It's like, why would they, considering all that's going on down here? So now it's left up to us to prove to ourselves and to this world that there is a God in Israel.
Keep in mind, those are rare occasions,
Very rare.
It's only the prophets and just like the one-off time where you don't see that often.
You don't.
But nowadays, everyone's having a conversation with God like he's on standby like that, Oh, the God spoke to me last night. He visited my dream. He told me this. He told me that.
Yeah.
God's speaking to everybody.
Oh, yeah.
I didn't get a call. And I'm an Israelite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And look at this here in chapter 5. Now it came to pass on the 3rd day that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house over against the king's house. And the king sat upon his royal throne in the royal house over against the gate of the house. Verse 2, and when it was so that when the king saw Esther, the queen, standing in the court, that she obtained favor in his sight. And the king held out to Esther the golden scepter that was in his hand. So Esther drew near and touched the top of the scepter. Then said the king unto her, What wilt thou, Queen Esther? And what is thy request? It shall be even given to thee the half of the kingdom.
Jeez. 127 provinces?
Wow.
Half of that?
Mm-hmm.
That's a lot of
And
provinces.
there wasn't even a divorce.
That's like 64 provinces. That's 63.5.
Yeah, and they weren't even divorced. Because nowadays you got a divorce to get
Oh,
the
yeah,
half.
100%.
Now, that's the strategy nowadays, in order to get wealth. Yeah, they'll marry somebody and then
And then
they'll
go
divorce
divorce.
them and get half.
The ultimate pay plan. But yeah, that's crazy. That's crazy.
This is a king. So you can see, like, to this point.
He's a generous man.
Oh, it's not so much that he was generous. It's just that he was so in love and taken by
Her beauty.
by Hadassah.
Infatuated.
He's like, he's throwing all the rules and regulations and the laws that he was supposed to go by, like, and he probably doesn't even know why. But 3 days prior to this, there was fasting and prayer that was taking place, and so even the king is now swayed. He doesn't even know what he's doing. Number one, he's madly in love. So whatever you do, never get to that point.
I appreciate the wisdom. Don't worry.
Don't ever get to that point, because you're not going to think clear. But in this example, he had no choice. He had no choice, because you're coming with the fasting and the prayer of an entire nation, of people that was together in one accord. And they say that, well, you don't see the God of Israel in here, but you definitely see his hand.
You know, faith is the substance of things
You
hoped
can
for
see-
and the evidence of things not seen.
There you have it. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And
I
the
couldn't have said
substance
it better
is
myself.
pouring right there. You're
Yes.
seeing it in effect.
You couldn't have seen a better example of that faith being demonstrated, because there you have it, the evidence of things not seen. It's right there in the story. This is a story of our people.
Because by it,
But-
the elders obtained a good report.
Yes.
This is a good report, man. Look at this.
Can you imagine, like, the God of Israel is just sitting back and he's like, you know what? Now let me see what's going to happen here. But from this little unknown, again, the fewest of all the tribes, here you have it. But it's the same people.
You know, in Exodus, because when Pharaoh was acting up, he hardened his heart.
Yeah.
Now you have the king over here, and now you're seeing the heart being softened.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's definitely, and he doesn't even know why he's doing it.
He's
reached out
blinded.
the golden scepter and said, wow, like, what is your request? I will give you even half the kingdom.
That's amazing.
64? You said?
63.5. 63. Let's round it up, 64. Yo, I think you might give me
Even
the extra
half
one.
the kingdom, and we don't even have to get divorced.
She played her cards right, man.
Oh goodness, yeah, that's one of those things. Pray that you never have to be in King Ahasuerus' position, I would say. But this is so interesting. But again, her wisdom is demonstrated. She could have come out and said, well, here's the situation, then. But no, it was with wisdom.
The nice pearl, took her time, make sure she looked the part before
Oh,
she
yeah.
made the request.
Oh yeah,
It's like,
Look at this in verse 4. And Esther answered, "If it seemeth good unto the king, let the king and Haman come this day unto the banquet that I have prepared for him."
Look at that. Now, a meeting request in home
Yeah.
court. A meeting request in home court. She's smart. She got food, the wine, the drink. She's preparing the atmosphere for that yes. Hey, that's tactics right there. It wasn't demanding. It was,
No.
Yeah, dress well. If you would be so kind to come join me at this banquet that I prepared for you and Haman, it would really please my heart. Okay, like, what? Yeah, for sure. Now, it's a home court win right now.
Yeah.
Brilliant strategy. Then the king said, "Cause Haman to make haste, that he may do as Esther hath said." So the king and Haman came to the banquet, and Esther has prepared. And the king said unto Esther at the banquet of wine, "What is thy petition? And it shall be granted thee. And what is thy request? Even to the half of the kingdoms it shall be performed." Then answered Esther and said, "My petition and my request is, if I have found favor in thy sight of the king, and if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request. Notice how she's framing these words, you know? If I found favor in the king, and to perform my request.
And I'm willing to bet that the way that she presented it, it wasn't like how,
people present things today?
Say again?
How people would present things today?
Definitely not. And definitely not how the former queen presented it, Vashti. You can see that humility. You can see that intelligence that's being used.
Communication is everything.
Oh my goodness.
What you say, the tone, your body language really impacts how your request will be received. And if you come at it with an aggressive manner or a tone that is disrespectful or non-considerate,
right,
it really shoots yourself in the foot a lot of the times. And so you could look in the world, today's world, a lot of people get in their own way because they don't know how to communicate properly.
Oh yeah.
But if they open up this book and take a look at this chapter and read how Esther's presenting herself, they can learn a lot.
You know what really, it's kind of frustrating, and at the same time it just amazes me, is that everyone reads this book, right? And they open up the page and it's clear and it's evident that you are reading the story of another people. It's obvious, but yet they want to just take that authority on themselves and include themselves in that story, and nobody invited them. It dawns on me that's when you observe Christianity and when you observe like quote unquote Christians and Christian teachers of Christianity, they always do that.
Us and we.
Yeah.
Where's the us and we coming from, bro?
Yeah, that it's fascinating and very frustrating when you see that being displayed.
Because
it's clearly these are the stories of another people. How did you get in there? Like, how are you including yourself in there?
This is propaganda.
We'll have to take that up in some other, on another subject.
Conversation,
Yeah, because these conversations that we have, they're so fulfilling, and for me, it's like, wow, when I just sitting down with you from the time that I first saw you being brought out, and now here you are, it's like, wow, this is just a fascinating experience for me to have this conversation with you, and all the other youth that are within the nation, just to see and to have this. It's like, wow, thank you, God of Israel, that I can actually be here to be a part of this. Just to see these things come out, because you can't really have these conversations with just anybody.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, 100%.
So this is really fascinating. For me, this whole experience is very fascinating. It's very humbling, to be quite honest with you, to see this teacher Ezekiel. Very humbling. But yeah, this story, unveiling this story,
exposing Purim. it was needed to be done. It was definitely needed to be done because we're learning a lot.
It's the time of it. I mean, if anyone hasn't really noticed, like, you can see like the decorum is slightly different because we're in the midst of
Purim season.
Purim celebration right now. Tablecloths are a little bit different.
We're in the month of Adar.
Yeah, you got balloons all around. Gifts are being given, and just the acknowledgement of what it is. This is not the be all and end all of it. But this is, in part and parcel, the story of it that leads to all of this. So it's not the gifts and all this that take precedence. It's the acknowledgement of what happened, what our God did for us. That people say, well, God is not even there in the story. But if you are a non-Israelite, if you are not a practicing member, if you are not part of the family, you're definitely not going to see it. You won't see it. And this is how it's supposed to be.
Yeah. Those who have the eyes to see and the ears to hear. If I have found favor in thy sight of the king, if it please the king to grant my petition and to perform my request, let the king and Haman come to the banquet that I shall prepare for them, and I will do tomorrow as the king hath said. Then went Haman forth that day joyful and with a glad heart. But when Haman saw Mordecai in the king's gate, that he stood not up nor moved for him, he was full of indignation, not wrath, indignation against Mordecai. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself, and when he came home, he sent and called for his friends and Zerah, his wife. And Haman told them of the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children and all the things where the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and servants of the king. Haman said, moreover, yea, Esther the queen did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared by myself, and tomorrow am I invited unto her also with the king. So you see Haman's happy. He's like, yeah, I'm going with the king. I'm going to the banquet. Esther's only invited me and the king. And he's telling off his wife and his children, yo, guys, I'm up there. Your daddy, you know, he's the one. So he's high. He's high up there right now.
Yeah. But that next verse.
Yet all that availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gates.
Isn't that something?
And he had indignation in his language.
It just goes to the character of this person. Like, he went home, right? So he was happy after, you know, what Esther had said. And said, it says, verse 10, nevertheless, Haman refrained himself because he saw Mordecai, right? And Mordecai, as per usual. Everyone else is bowing down as Haman passes by, but not Mordecai. So he goes home. Nevertheless, Haman refrained himself. He didn't say anything. He wasn't upset. And when he came home, he sent and called for his friends. So, hey, I'll, call my friends and Zeresh, his wife. And Haman told them the glory of his riches because, he's second in command in the kingdom. So he's like, we already know this. Like, why are you, he's
I see what you're
boasting.
saying. Yeah.
So here he is. And a man told them the glory of his riches and the multitude of his children. He had 10 sons. Again, what they made reference to in their Kabbalah. Again.
Yeah.
10 friends, right? Sorry, 10 sons he had. And all the things wherein the king had promoted him, and how he had advanced him above the princes and the servants of the king. Haman said, moreover, yea, Queen Esther, Queen Esther the queen, did let no man come in with the king unto the banquet that she had prepared, but myself. And tomorrow I am invited unto her also with the king. So that's a very exclusive engagement.
Yeah.
But yet Haman has called all his friends and his wife to hear his proclamation. And then he says in verse 13, yet all this availeth me nothing, so long as I see Mordecai the Jew sitting at the king's gate. Like, all this promotion, all this riches, all this favor that he has, and it's still not enough.
He's a sorrowful man. That's crazy.
It's still not enough.
Enough is never enough for him.
Oh man,
Talk
this
about
guy,
greed.
he deserves like the Simp of the Year award.
That's a good fitting.
And he should be up there as like, throughout the year, this is that dude. It's like, don't be that guy.
Yeah.
Like, that's the guy you don't want to be, because he has all of this, but it's still not enough. Why? Because he's seeing Mordecai, that Israelite, standing up. Like, he just got to get, like, his world won't be right until he's gotten rid of Mordecai and his people.
He's a very unhappy person.
And here's the advice from his wife now.
Then said Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends unto him,
Yeah.
let a gallows be made of 50 cubits high, and tomorrow speak thou unto the king that Mordecai may be hanged thereon. Then go thou in merrily with the king unto the banquet, and the thing pleased Haman, and he caused the gallows to be made.
Right.
Look
So
at this
you
guy.
can see she's in one accord with his evil.
Whispering in his ears.
Oh my goodness. Like, what sort of advice is this?
Rough stuff.
So the wife and all his friends, this is the advice. Hey, have some gallows made. You're gonna and hang Mordecai on it.
That's
like,
crazy.
wow. And then you'll be happy. Like, you're causing bloodshed, you want somebody to die, and then you'll be happy? What kind of people are these?
Disturbed. And they're all cooperating together. But watch what happens here. This is the climax. On that night, could not the king sleep, and the commanded to bring the book of records of the chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Begathana and Teresh, 2 of the king's chamberlain, the keepers of the door, who sought to lay hands on the king Ahasuerus. And the king said, what honor and dignity has been done to Mordecai for this? So if you remember earlier on in the scriptures how Mordecai identified those two chamberlains
Right.
that were going to do harm to the king. And just so the king happened the night before to remember these things.
Oh, the thing is that on that night could not the king sleep? You ever had those nights? Like sometimes you're just up in your bed like, oh, I can't sleep. Like, but then he something stirred within his spirit.
He was
and he
moved.
couldn't sleep. And then he for some reason he called for the book of the Chronicles of their kingdom to see, well, let me find out. Maybe something is in here. And there you have it.
And he remembered.
Yeah.
Two of the king chamberlains, the keeper of the door, who sought to lay hands on the king, Ahasuerus. And the king said, what honor and dignity had been done to Mordecai for this? So the king's like, oh my gosh, did we reward Mordecai for this?
Yeah.
Like, did we? Oh my gosh.
Man saved my life and I did nothing for him.
Then said the king's servant, the ministered unto him, there is nothing done for him. And the king said, who is the court? Now Haman was come into the outward court of the king's house to speak unto the king to hang Mordecai on the gallows that he had prepared for him. And the king's servant said unto him, behold, Haman standeth in the court. And the king said, let him come in. So Haman came in, and the king said unto him, what shall be done unto the man whom the king delighteth to honor? Now Haman thought in his heart, to whom would the king delight to do honor more than to myself?
Right.
So you see, Haman's thinking, oh, he's talking about me.
Yeah, like who else? There's no one else but me that the king would want to honor.
And and Haman answered the king,
You're right.
for the man whom the king delighteth to honor, let the royal apparel be brought which the king useth to wear,
Right.
and the horses that the king rideth upon, and the crown royal which is set upon his head. And let this apparel and the horses be delivered to the hand of the king's most noble princes, that they may array the man with whom the king delighteth to honor, and bring him on horseback through the streets of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor.
Isn't that something?
This is like the ultimate revenge. This is
I'm looking at this thing and I'm like, wow, there's no limit. Like, this guy wants to be the king, right?
kind of like a certain other person, you know.
Yeah, this is right. He
Kinda like
wants to parade and it's like
exalt himself higher.
It's so familiar.
It's so familiar.
It's so familiar. You say, well, the king is asking you know, what should I do to honor somebody? Like, I want to honor somebody. What should be done? And he's thinking, well, it's got to be me, right?
Yeah, who else would it be? Like, you know, I'm Haman.
So he goes, let the royal apparel be brought. Not just any apparel, but let the royal apparel, which the king useth to wear. So whatever, let the garment of the king be brought, and let him wear it. And not only wear it, but the horse that the king rides upon. And the crown, even the crown, which is set upon his head, the crown that is on the king's head, and let this apparel and horse be delivered to the hand of the ones of the king's most noble princes, that he may array the man withal whom the king delighted to honor. And not only that, but wait, there's more. Bring him on horseback through the street of the city, and proclaim before him, thus shall it be done to the man whom the king delighteth to honor.
What a vision. Haman wanted this for himself. So he wanted the royal garments of the king
Wow.
and the crown to be given to the princes,
Yeah.
and the princes to adorn him. And that was the ultimate vision of glorification.
Isn't
in
that
Haman's
something?
This guy, man, he's vain.
This is great, man.
This
Because in verse 10, what happens?
Then the king said to Haman,
Yeah.
make haste.
Make haste.
And take the apparel on the horse, as I said.
That's a
and
wonderful
do
idea.
even-
Fantastic. Okay.
Oh my gosh. And do even so to Mordecai, the Jew,
Oh, yeah.
that sitteth at the king's gate. Let nothing fail of all that thou hast spoken.
Yes.
That is perfect timing. Then took Haman the pearl of the horse and arrayed Mordecai and brought him the horseback through the streets of the city and proclaimed before him, thus shall it be done unto the man whom the king delighted to honor.
Yes.
And Mordecai came again to the king's gate, but Haman hasted to his house, mourning and having his head covered. Oh man, and Haman told Zeresh, his wife, and all his friends everything that had befallen him. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, if Mordecai be at the seed of the Jews, before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him.
Imagine that.
Jeez, that's his own family members and his friends. And while they were yet talking with him, came to the king's chamberlain and hasted to bring Haman unto the banquet that Esther had prepared.
Now, he had no second to even breathe, because come on, you gotta go, like, come on, like,
Yeah.
like, whoa, before he could even think what to do, he's like, it's like, he's perplexed, as the people were in Sushan that was perplexed as to what's happening. So he doesn't have a second to even think. He's got to be summoned onto the banquet that was prepared. So he's like, whoa, geez.
Crazy. But that's like embarrassing, you know. It's like has all idea.
This is beyond
and he
embarrassing.
End up doing
like,
the favor too.
Yeah, and in verse 13, it's like Haman told Zeresh his wife. So he told all his friends everything that had befallen him as per usual. Then said his wise men and Zeresh his wife unto him, if Mordecai be of the seed of the Jews before whom thou hast begun to fall, thou shalt not prevail against him, but shalt surely fall before him. It's like, yo, dude, you don't have a chance.
That's crazy.
You don't have a chance. As they say, you don't have a snowball's chance in hell. I mean, we know that not to be true, but it's like, you don't have a chance of a snowball in the bright hot sun of, I don't know, like Georgia or someplace, or Miami. You don't stand a chance. So, whew. And while they were yet thinking on that, it's like, geez. Then the knock on the door comes and he's summoned and he has to go off into the banquet. This is an amazing story.
I know, and I see our time is just running quick. So I guess we have to leave him on the cliffhanger, because it's a good story.
This is beyond a good story.
It's a really good
story.
story.
But it's so simple though, right?
It is, and just even to that point, because as we get ready to finish things off here, but it's simple. That's the most important thing here.
Yeah.
There's no extra text or any extra thing to be added to look into what the scriptures need to be said, you know?
Right.
Is that as long as you have the eyes to see and the ears to hear, you should be fine. As long as you have the spirit of truth, or if you have an Israelite with you, the path becomes easier.
Yes.
You get what I'm saying? And even though we're going through this and we're conversating, we're looking and examining the world, because the world, there's a lot. This is the age of information.
It is.
And just so you guys know, like, we don't criticize here at the Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, but we will not compromise.
Indeed.
You get what I'm saying? Is that truth is truth, and what is written is what is written. And this is our scriptures. This is our Bible. This is our history. And if we don't tell our story, someone else will.
Someone else will. And you know what they're going to do? They're going to tell the story incorrectly.
Exactly.
The story will be incorrect. So therefore, we take it upon ourselves to make sure that the story is told accurately. And what's so ironic about that is we don't actually have to say anything, because it's written here in black and white. However, it will require an Israelite such as yourself and myself, a member of this Israelite Nation Worldwide Ministries, to tell the story correctly, to even read it correctly. In English. In English.
Key factor there.
Nothing, no added ingredients necessary, no outside influences, no prejudice, no convoluting things or making up things. It's just written here. But in order for that to be done, you do have to have the spirit of understanding. You do have to know the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. You do have to know and understand that our God is a spirit, and those that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth, which is so vitally important. It can't be done any other way. Exactly. Because if not, you're going to get things like a tree of life and tree of death and all these sorts of trees that come from a place that's not even biblical. All these mysticisms and stories and, poof.
Oh, that's crazy.
Smoke and mirrors and all that stuff. How much time do we have left, or is
We're done.
So, thank you so much for joining us today at AIJ Television. It's been it's real fun when you actually get to expose and really go into the scriptures as it's meant to be. We hope that you join us again sometime in the future. Again, I am Elder Freddie, and this is
Teacher Ezekiel.
Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you again soon.
Take care.
Peace.